Mike, are we up? Yeah, no, I'm just going to give you this and then... Yeah,
Yeah, first let me congratulate you on your transgender bathrooms. Fantastic. Because Donald Trump and what's her name? Bruce Jenner.
Caitlin.
That's the one. They can both use these, and no one has to be ashamed, and no one has to be worried. Thank you very much. I am actually pleased that I didn't have a book launch. This will be in lieu of that book launch, and I think a much nicer crowd than I might have had at my own book launch. So thank you very much for coming. So, do you want to tell me what you want to know, or do you want me to read the book from cover to cover and put them to sleep?
Gareth, I think if you could just start with, the reason for the book and why. I mean, it's your second book that you're bringing out. Why? What is the motive behind it?
The publisher prevailed upon me to put out a second book. The first book we had a lot of success with. It was really just short stories about observations and kind of things that was largely opinion. And this one was semi-autobiographical, and I was quite resistant to doing anything like that because I don't think anyone under the age of 50 or 60 should ever write an autobiography. I thought it was ridiculous that Justin Bieber had a biography out. And I didn't want to be thought of in that club. But when we started Cliff Central 3 years ago, I had a story to tell, and we were even more, when I say we, Rena and my longtime manager and business partner, we were both persuaded at the beginning of last year, with all that controversy around Mnet and idols and Penny Sparrow and all of that stuff, that there was a story worth telling, because it was a story that got the whole of South Africa talking, in which I found myself an unwilling participant. So I thought that would be the good starting point, or a good starting point for a story. And Rena called up the publisher and said, all right, fine, you're going to get your book. And then she put me under the cosh for about 3 months. And eventually, after about 4 months, she realized I was running out of steam, so she helped me, and she climbed in knee-deep and made sure I wrote. And we churned out a book late last year. The problem was that we had to launch the book the day after the last episode of Idols, because I knew Mnet wouldn't be thrilled with it, and therefore it only came out in November. And usually for Christmas these books should come out a little bit earlier. But all's well that ends well, we're here now, and really the book was in 4 parts. The first part about this obsession I have with freedom of expression, which I think is something which any of us who believe in a free, open, democratic society should be extraordinarily strongly, violently, powerfully behind. It's probably the only thing that's worth being sacred. If there is such a thing as sacred, I don't regard very much as sacred, but freedom of expression is probably the one thing that comes closest for me. The second part of the book is really about my early days in radio. The third part about television and my experiences there, and the fourth part about building this business, Cliff Central, the people that we've been working with, the stories that we've been able to tell on this new platform, and what the future really holds in terms of media. This wasn't just a week of cabinet reshuffles, it was a week of massive reshuffles in radio in South Africa. There are people who were here who are now there, people who are there who are now unemployed, and people who are there who are now online. And so it's all changing, and we sort of read the writing on the wall with this one 3 years ago. And I'm pleased to say things are unfolding according to plan. And we've got a tremendous, dedicated and loyal listenership of people who love ideas. They love the battle of ideas. They want to be stimulated mentally. They want to be informed. They want to be entertained. They want to be inspired. They want to be empowered. And that's really what we do on our platform. So the book is a useful, I suppose, almost a supplement to what we're doing on air in some ways. And for that reason, it was worth doing.
Now, Gareth, there's 2 things that come from what you said and from your book, and I'm not sure how many people know, but Gareth's business partner is Reno. And I only found that out recently. And you always have the face, and then you have somebody behind the scenes. And it's very interesting because, most big companies, there's always 2. So if you look at Steve Jobs, he had Steve Wozniak, and many other. And obviously for Gareth, it's Reno. Gareth, do you mind sharing with us a bit, what it is like? Because, a lot of people are entrepreneurs and it's lonely out there for them. And how is your relationship with Rena been? Because in the book, I know you mentioned a few times where she gets quite furious with you about a thing or two that you might have said or not have said. So how's that?
I think everyone in the country has at some point been furious with me over some opinion. You see, it's always funny until it happens to you. Yeah, Rena and I met years ago when John Burks, of all people, introduced me to her and said, he phoned her up and said, Rena, there's this kid that I want you to meet. His name is Gareth Cliff. He came to my office today, and I think he might have something. And the one thing that anybody who is in radio will tell you, because everyone in radio knows who Rena is, believe me, is that she loves developing talent, she loves finding talent, she loves getting the potential out of people that she works with. And she's done that quietly and professionally for 25, 30 even years. I know she looks very, very young, but you've got to understand there's a lot of wisdom there. And it is important to have a partner in all this. I feel some of the time as if I'm an inadequate partner to her with the level of her experience. She brought talk radio to South Africa along with Izzy Kirsch, Stan Katz and John Burks. So she's responsible for pretty much the idea, the format of talk radio in South Africa. And the number of careers she's launched are extraordinary. They're in the hundreds probably. And for good or for bad, we've worked together for 18 years now. And she's put up with all my shit for years. She's patient and sage and wise. And I think anyone who doesn't have a Jewish mother is missing out big time. Because she can be tough as nails, and she does fight with me often, and we disagree about a lot of things. But to have someone in your corner like that is the most powerful alliance you'll ever make in your life. After that, nobody scares you. Mnet can try and fire you. You can go to the court with Dali Mpofu at your side, and it still feels like you were invincible before you met Dali Mpofu. So from that point of view, it's an extraordinary thing. And I think some of us are just lucky that we happen upon each other and we want to build something special and something that's lasting. And the interest for us is in creating a place where South Africans can have authentic, honest, real conversations. Not the kind that people have in the public square or even on social media these days, because that's become a sewer, a toxic slime pit of ugliness and viciousness and anonymity and just outbursts of meaningless nastiness. By and large, there are obviously exceptions. But it's not a constructive place. And what we're doing on Cliff Central is, for me, constructive. We're contributing to the dialogue in a positive way. Just last week I interviewed Zweli Mkhize. That'll be broadcast probably on Monday. Who's the Treasurer General of the ANC. Just after that interview, he actually went to have the meeting with the President that we're all reading about now. And the number of authors, as already indicated by Deborah, the number of people who have great ideas worth sharing that come to talk to us makes it worth getting up every day at 4:30, which I'm an idiot to do. I could have chosen to start my show at midnight, but there it is, for better or for worse. So that's where we're at, and we've got a terrific crew of people. Greg is here, who's our technical genius too, and who's just rebuilt our website. So go and look at it, please, cliffcentral.com.
Excellent, thanks, Gareth. So, I mean, what I'm taking away from that is that the success of a business is really important to have the right partners that you do this with, because otherwise it's very lonely and it's very, yeah, it's almost, you almost get the Euro syndrome, which is a fantasy. It's a lot more about collaborativeness. But Cliff, you're also speaking about expression, and it's obviously one of your big passions. And I was reading that, and I was thinking, being expressive outside of the work environment. In other words, speaking and giving opinions about people is one thing, but having that expression within your teams and within your own environment, does that change? And how does one express that?
Well, to me, you only really know you're free when you can say what you think and do what you say. And that also, for me, is a sort of parallel definition of integrity. If you promise someone you'll do something, and you do it, I would think that that is a sign of some integrity. If you say what you think instead of what you want them to think you think, you're fooling not only them, if they are silly enough to be fooled, but yourself. And that's very duplicitous and doesn't necessarily end in positive results. I think that being free means knowing that you can speak honestly and openly about just about anyone or anything. And I do think that that's under threat in some ways. It's a right that's guaranteed to us in the Constitution, but it has to be fought for every day. It has to be fought for in books. It has to be fought for in speech. It has to be fought for in action. It's not a fait accompli in 1994, and from then on you can rest on your laurels and imagine that everyone will respect your right to free speech. What we see in the public square is that people are constantly being shut down, either for unpopular opinion or for supposedly offensive speech, which is in many cases not necessarily offensive to the person who says they're offended by it. They're being offended on someone else's behalf, which is ridiculous. And remember, you take offense can't be given to you. In other words, it's a voluntary action. You can also decide quite as easily to decide not to be offended, and then move on with your life and be adult. But to be offended seems to be a clarion call for people who don't have a lot going on in their lives. So free expression is important. If you want to know who your masters are, just think about who you're not allowed to speak openly about, and then you'll know who you're the slave to. It's that simple. When it comes to being able to exercise that on a daily basis, not everybody has an online broadcasting channel like I do. Not everybody has a television show or a radio show or a newspaper column or a book. But we're all, in this world of social media, broadcasters. Everybody in here, at some point or another, whether you're putting up a picture of your food on Instagram, or whether you're talking about what you really think of the president, you're exercising free expression. And you are responsible for what you say, and therefore you are a broadcaster. So, for me, it helps that I've got some years of experience in that, but it doesn't mean I'm immune to criticism. And it doesn't mean that people don't want to shut me and you and everyone else down if we say things that are unpopular.
So what I love about what Cliff's saying is that integrity is something that you've got to live. You can't just, have it one way. It's got to be all over. So a lot of companies have got the value of integrity, but nobody knows what it means, or nobody necessarily follows it because, they don't speak their minds. They don't express what they're supposed to be expressing. And if
Can I just add that more importantly than expressing your opinion, the right to free expression also means that you can hear other opinions. In other words, you become your own censor. And this is important because I don't think, as much as we've got a lovely crowd of people here tonight, and I'm sure you're all delightful, if I got to know you better, I would probably trust you a little more, but not enough to let you be my censor. I still don't want you to decide for me what I should and shouldn't read, what I should and shouldn't do. And I think that's a right that all of us feel quite strongly about. I look to your left and right and decide if you think that those people would be an appropriate censor for you. I should hope not. The right to hear an unpleasant thing, the right to hear something which you horribly and completely disagree with, even something that offends you on your most basic integrity, your most basic morality, something like racism or sexism or a comment that most people would regard as completely inappropriate in all circumstances. At least you know what you're dealing with if someone says those things. You're able to ascertain the quality of your enemy, and therefore you're able to have an argument with them where nobody is being euphemistic about what they actually think. That's valuable. That way I can pick out my enemies and my friends, and I can have constructive conversations with my friends, and maybe even change one or two enemies' minds. But if we're all lying to each other in order to try and avoid being politically incorrect, the game is already lost.
Okay, guys, my last question, then I'm going to open the floor. But there's something in Gareth's book that I really want to, if you buy the book just for these pages, do that. It's pages 110. It's the vision that he created Cliff Central with. And the vision is about the big picture. And if we don't get the big picture, because the big picture is what takes the heart towards something. And I just want to read a little extract for you. Is if you are working on something exciting that you really care about, you don't have to be pushed. The vision pulls you. That statement also resonated with me. What makes you hell-free, raging mad, and what makes you deliriously happy, we should all ask ourselves these things every day. Gareth, how is your vision being lived out today? Do you feel that this what you've put in, is it working? Do you have the team behind it? How's that playing out in Cliff Central?
Well, let's take baby steps. I mean, I don't think that we're even halfway into realizing that vision. It's quite a big picture, an audacious goal. But I think it's something everybody has to have. And trust me, these 3 years have been full of challenges, and there are a lot of very tough realizations you have along the way. You realize that a lot of people are nervous about change. You realize a lot of people, while they're already using Facebook and Twitter, they ask you stupid questions like, I don't know if this podcast thing's going to catch on. And you say to them, well, you're probably the kind of person who said, I don't know if this Facebook thing's going to catch on, and now you're on it. So jump before you're pushed. Don't end up being the only one in your group of friends who hasn't heard something that's really excellent, that has the qualities of changing minds and of in this country particularly, driving, powerful intellectual argument, which you're not going to get, God bless them, from commercial radio stations. You're just not going to get it from them, because when you delve that deep, you upset too many people. And I've got to say, what I've been encouraged by is the quality of people who have been on our side from day one. It's amazing who comes out of the woodwork and stands by you when you're really driven to achieve something, which I hope in this case with Cliff Central is a noble thing. At very least, something which I hope will be successful and will create opportunities for other South Africans. We've created shows for people who are rank amateurs, people who've never had any experience in radio before, young, talented girls and guys who have things to say, have stories to tell. I said to someone just today, if you think about human history, and this is no slight on books, we've only really been reading. The Gutenberg press was 500 or 600 years, 500 years ago. And before then, only a few monks could read, and they were read in Latin, so it wasn't in the common tongue. So reading is a novel thing for our brains, and reading in evolutionary terms is not the way that we get most of the useful information that we absorb on a daily basis. Hearing, listening, is actually far more valuable to us. It's how our ancestors used to pass down stories, pass down mythology, pass down important discoveries. These were the things that contributed to us being here and being able to print books and read them. So listening and the power of that storytelling and the tone of voice in which you do it is an extraordinarily, viscerally powerful thing, which we need to get back to mining effectively. If you're listening to rubbish, your brain will turn to rubbish. If you're listening to things that challenge you, that inspire you, that move you forward, sometimes things you don't necessarily agree with, but that's also good. The definition of intelligence isn't how much you know, I think it's how much you want to know. And what better way to figure these things out than to listen to people who either have a different point of view to you, or have something to add that you didn't know about. And those are the people I want to create a platform for on Cliff Central. So yeah, the vision is big. By no means do I see myself as some kind of a savior, but I do think we're pioneering. I do think we're creating an open, democratic place in the most democratic space available to humans in our entire history, the internet. The internet is the one place that you can be you, even if you do have an egg for a Twitter icon. But you can be you. And even if you do just spew vitriol, if that is all you are, and that's how you will be known one day, then good for you, but you're being you. And for better or for worse, we want to create a content business, a content hub that creates that authentic, extraordinary, special, powerful, meaningful, valuable material that we can all hopefully benefit from, and where we can engage. The thing about our audience is they tell us immediately if they don't like something, and they tell us immediately if they do. And they call in, and they message us, and they tweet, and they WhatsApp, and they WeChat, and they do everything that modern people do when they communicate about things that they care about. That drives me, that keeps me going, and keeps me waking up every morning inspired and ready to fight.
Excellent. So I'm going to open up the floor. Is there anybody out there with a hand? They want to ask Gareth a question?